Hey guys, good afternoon and welcome back to a brand new review of my Doctor Who marathon. Now, last time we reviewed Unearthly Child, the first ever Doctor Who story of all time, but now we are moving on to the first ever encounter of the Doctor's arch nemesis, their own story titled The Daleks. And so, if you have not, well, surely you must watch The Daleks. This is their first ever story that they appear in. How can you not watch it? Well, I'm going to give you my honest reviews and my honest opinions about this whole story because, honestly, this is the first story where we see the Daleks for the first time. We see kind of like their sucker arm going towards Barbara, and like she completely screamed her head off. It was almost a petrified moment, and we were all wondering in our television screen back in the 1960s, what was that thing? Who are the Daleks? And like who are these creatures? Well, this is where it all begins. The first ever story of the Daleks, titled The Daleks. And it gives you a little bit of an insight on who are the Daleks and what they're planning to do and, like, you know, how do they cope and how they live in the city, which I'm going to give you everything you need to know about this story. Do I think it's a really good story in total, and so forth. So let's begin. The Daleks, written by Terry Nation. He's the original guy who created the Daleks and who came up with the idea of making the Daleks so menacing and so iconic. He's just brilliant. He's written so many Dalek stories in the past. He's a legend with Dalek creations, absolutely. So yeah, the Doctor is about to have his first ever meeting with the Daleks. The TARDIS lands on an alien petrified jungle beyond which lies a mysterious deserted city. The Doctor insists on exploring, but before long the TARDIS crew all begin experiencing the early effects of the radiation sickness, and they discover that the Metal City isn't as deserted as they first thought. So that gives you a little bit of insight on how creepy and how atmospheric the story is, and so there's 7 parts in this story. Now, the only criticism that I would say about this whole story, which I know many people will say about this story, that it's really, really brilliant. It's a brilliant, fantastic story nonetheless, but it does drag along too long. It's way far too long. I think it could have been, you know, more suited for a 5-part or no less a 7-part. I mean, 7-parts are... I mean, I know it's good to have loads and loads and loads of detail within the whole story of the first ever Dalek story, but honestly, I think most of the scenes, they do drag on too long, and it just seems quite a bit boring to just watch everything. But nonetheless, it is brilliant. The story's fantastic. I would say episode 1 is very creepy, very atmospheric. You can almost feel that you're in a petrified jungle, being, you know, feeling that every scene that all the plants and animals, like there's no animals around, and all the plants are just dead. They literally turn to ash just like in a matter of minutes whenever you rub them. It's just a petrified moment. It's very atmospheric, very eerie. It gets you into the, you know, into the feeling that like this is a very scary and very frightening moment because you have no idea what's in that jungle except for these mysterious creatures known as the Files, which in episode 2, the Daleks give a little bit of an insight on what their history was, of how this kind of race on Skaro between 2 races, the Files and the Daleks, they've been fighting for so long until one of them was the winner, the victory, which was the Daleks initially. And so they conquered Skaro for many centuries, and so the Files were left to die out, but also the Daleks had thought that the Files were mutated and, you know, kind of different from the Daleks. But in the whole story, they're not really mutations at all, but they're just really human beings, almost perfect human beings. But they are, you know, able to cure with the radiation sickness, as from the first ever story, we kind of see the effects of that in the first little few minutes of the story. We see that that everybody's getting used to the mole cells. It's quite okay-ish. They're not feeling any radiation sickness at all. But when they have a look inside the TARDIS and the radiation reads danger, you know there's something wrong, and it means they're going to have a big intake of radiation sickness, which means they're going to be suffering. It's going to be quite hot. They're going to, die out from water, not enough water. They're going to literally die out if they don't get treatment at all, because this radiation sickness will completely poison them forever until they have a suitable drug in order for them to be cured, which the files provide. And so they create a good friendship, a great alliance with the Doctor and his companions. And so we really see the good alliance between the files and the Doctor and his companions. But the Daleks, they are very sneaky. They are quite mischief in this story, because they really feel like that they are the conquerors of Skaro, which is their home planet. And with this story, I really do feel that the Daleks kind of own this story, because it's all about them. The files may be interested, they are quite good in some scenes, which I feel like that the files are quite of an underrated race, and I wish they could come back, because we haven't seen much of the files, maybe later on, but this is where we first see the encounter of the Daleks and the files, and who is superior to what not. The files really want to live in peace, away from all the war and stuff, but the reason why the whole planet is full of radiation is because of a nuclear bomb, or a neutron bomb, which fills with loads of radiation. When it explodes, it causes like a big massive radiation leakage throughout the whole planet, which makes the whole planet hostile with radiation. And if anybody without the treatment could initially die within a matter of hours. So they were the Daleks were planning out a plan to get rid of and eliminate, or should I say exterminate, the files once and for all. And so they were thinking of trying to use the drug in order for, their own reasons, in order to plan out. But then they decided to build another nuclear bomb, which could have initially a new type of radiation which could leak out and therefore destroy the files, which they don't have the perfect treatment for. And so the files will initially die out or be exterminated, and so will the Doctor, Ian, Barbara and Susan. And so yeah, for most of the story, Ian, Barbara, Susan and the Doctor, they really just feel a bit left out. They just feel forgotten about. I mean, in episode 2, they do get captured by the Daleks, and they sometimes go out the door, but they usually stay in that original prison cell. They don't get out. They're just completely stuck in this one area, trying to figure out of a way. But I think was it episode 3? I think it was episode 4 or 3, I can't remember, but they were figuring out a way on like how the Daleks and how this whole city of Skaro is made out of metal. Like, why is it made out of metal? Because they were thinking about, is it electricity? They're draining power from the floor. It really builds up, that kind of good creativity that the Daleks are just living in this metal city because of static electricity. And that's what the Daleks run on. If they don't run, that's why the Daleks never leave the city. Because it's full of, marsh and, it's swampy and, it's not really perfect for Daleks because they are intelligent machines. They have a mind of their own, except the files, they are much quicker than the Daleks because they can run and hide very easily. But the only thing about the files is that they're not really tempted to fight at all. Whereas the Daleks, they're more to exterminate them once and for all. So they have their pros and cons, I would have to say, but initially, I think the Daleks just basically dominate for most of the story because they are very ruthless, very aggressive in the story because they are seen quite dark. And although we've never seen the Daleks for the first time, episode 1's cliffhanger is just phenomenal. You can just see how Barbara is so petrified from just seeing that kind of little arm going towards her. You can almost feel and hear her scream so loud. I mean, so I have the episode 1 on full volume, on full blast, listening on, from these scenes. And also the music is quite intense, very atmospheric, and, gets you that boom, boom. That kind of music. It's just a really intense but very petrified moment, if you believe. If I was in Barbara's position and if I was trapped and the Dalek came towards me, I would literally just scream for many years. It's just so scary. For any of you who haven't seen the Daleks and if you watched it for the first time, you will completely shock yourself. And I sometimes, whenever I'm watching my Doctor Who marathon, I try and, forget what actually happens in the story. Pretend if I haven't seen the story at all and I see it for the first time. And so, that's sometimes I usually see in my Doctor Who marathon. I usually tend to think that I've never seen these stories all before. And so, I'm usually trying to get used back into Doctor Who, which I have seen them in the past. But with this story, I really do feel how the Daleks are very, very menacing, very ruthless, because they tend to believe that they are the superior race. They don't need anybody to help them because they are capable of exterminating and wiping out every single human being, as well as their Far race as well. But here's just one thing that criticizes me. The one thing that doesn't get me right. How come the Daleks have a spare supply of food and water? That doesn't make sense. I mean, if you know the Daleks, surely they don't eat fresh fruit and veg and they don't drink water at all. So, why do they have fruit and veg and water in their city? Doesn't make sense. If the Daleks are the only people who live in the city, then why do they need a full supply of water and fresh fruit and veg? A food supply, and that's... Why? Why do they need it? It just makes no sense. Perhaps the Daleks are waiting for some visitors. Perhaps to draw in some people. Draw in the files. Perhaps they're for the prisoners who are morely like files. But we have that scene where the Daleks offer fruit and veg and, a food supply to the files. But instead it's an ambush where the Daleks completely surround all the files and then they all exterminate them, just leaving them without the food at all. And so that's really a way of drawing in files to get the food, but then Daleks come and then exterminate them. So it's quite a good plan to ambush the files in order for them to be exterminated. But that's not the case here. The files do live on, but the Daleks, sadly, since the Doctor ruined their static electricity supply, which meant some of the Daleks couldn't run on the floor, but at least some of them can. But most of these, Daleks went up in flame, exploded really, because they had a really radiation sickness. I'm not sure what actually happened to the Daleks, but it almost seemed like the Daleks went a bit haywire because all of the static electricity were going into a little reverse and kind of overflowed and overloaded really, kind of, exploded the Daleks and completely shut down. Perhaps that's what happened. I mean, I'm not 100% sure. It could be radiation sickness or it could be a static electricity problem. I don't know. But what I do know from the story is that it's really fantastic. I mean, I do have to agree that the Daleks are, the best at their best in this story because they are the true iconic Doctor Who monster of all time. I mean, this is their first ever encounter of a Doctor Who monster, and for the first ever monster that the Doctor has encountered, they are completely iconic, so popular. Any kid can recognise what a Dalek is or what is there for its purpose. A kid can know anything about the Daleks, but if it's a complete stranger who does not even know who are the Daleks, then this is a great story for you to get involved and know who are the Daleks, what are their history, and what's their relationship with the Files, and etc, etc. But yeah, my only criticism is about the story, it rattles on too long. It just lacks pace. It's so very slow tempo. It just doesn't really build up to big suspense. It would be more suited as if it was being like a 5-parter or maybe a 6-parter. I don't know, but a 7-parter does seem very, very long. Although the other stories like I have who are they're like 8 parts or like 10 parts, probably what I mean. But on one occasion, those stories kind of, build up so much pace, whereas this one kind of loses its pace because it's very slow. It doesn't really build up as much, suspense as many Dalek stories do. It's a very slow story, but when you kind of watch it, you do realise the whole knowledge of the whole story. I'm not trying to say that the story can be faster, just wish it could be shortened down a bit. probably maybe remove a few scenes or so, and therefore it could, you know, improve the story. But I don't think the guys who produced the Daleks, I don't think they really want to miss out with anything about the Daleks, because it's their first story and we want to know as much as possible on who are the Daleks, what's their purpose, and etc, etc. The whole basis of the Daleks just really takes on the whole adventure on who they are and what is their purpose. So that's really a kind of a deep mystery in the story. And so there's loads of good cliffhangers. I would have to say that my least favourite episode is episode 6. I mean, where we have the cliff moment where Ian, Barbara and a few of the Files trying to cross over a deep ledge where they're trying to jump over to the other ledge and trying to slide round. It kind of wasted about 10 minutes of filming, which, although it was okay, I mean, we show good teamwork, good relationships with the Files, and also Ian and Barbara, they do make a really good team, I have to say. And also Ian and Barbara, they make such a good relationship with the Files as well. But as I said again, it took 10 minutes or almost 15 minutes to film that, so bit of a waste of doing the cliff moments, which, although is okay, the cliff jumping is okay, but just wish they could have cut out a few of them, and just, they didn't really need to show all of the cliff scenes and stuff like that. But oh well, never mind, it's already done anyway, I can't change anything now. But anyway, definitely what I would have to say about this story is it's a really great Dalek story. For its first introduction, I have to agree that it is an absolute classic. It is the first ever Dalek story that we encountered first time, and it's just an amazing story where we kind of see on how the Daleks adapt to be so menacing and very ruthless towards anybody who stands in their way. We really do see how the Daleks are really capable of, and how they're capable of exterminating many races and many planets and many civilizations. We don't know yet, but this is where we see the first ever, start to a brilliant race, but also to the most iconic monsters of all time in Doctor Who history. The epicenter of every single Doctor Who monster. They just cannot compete what the Daleks can do. They are just the best Doctor Who monster of all time. So iconic, the Daleks cannot be beaten. But when it comes to destroying Daleks, the Doctor rules mostly of all. And this is where, I mean, the destruction of the Daleks is okay. They just go a bit haywire, it's just a bit silly in some places. But overall, great story. I do agree with the story. It is really good. I have to say that I have to give it a 9 out of 10 because of how it's its first story. I'm not going to say it's terrible because of the lacking pace, but I would say it is a good solid 9 out of 10. I wouldn't say it would be classed as a 10 out of 10 because of the slow pacing. It drags on too long, a bit of silliness here and there. Many scenes were unnecessary because of its, drags on too long, as I said again. But overall, a brilliant, well, enjoyable story. I really do enjoy the Daleks. Anyway, also there are some good special features on here which tells you the creation of the Daleks, which is quite fascinating, on how Terry Nation came up with the idea of creating Daleks for the first time. So yeah, please definitely watch it. I mean, definitely pick it up, because you will definitely experience the whole truth and whole secrets about the Daleks and how their race came about in existence in the entire universe. And so definitely check this DVD out. And so guys, thank you for watching for this review. I hope you have enjoyed it. Please do give a like and please do subscribe if you're new to my channel. And so the next episode which we're going to be reviewing, or the next story we're going to be reviewing, is The Edge of Destruction, which is the final story of the beginning box set. Now, Unearthly Child, the Dalek and The Edge of Destruction is one full box set, the beginning box set. Now, if you are definitely new to Classic Who and you enjoy watching those three stories, then do pick it up, because it is an essential part of you being an essential Doctor Who fan. This is where Doctor Who really gets into, intact with and capable of producing so many great stories. So yeah, the Daleks definitely successful, I have to agree. So yeah, really good indeed. And so guys, thank you for watching, and I will see you guys for the Edge of Destruction review. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you guys next time.